Well, it's 7 degrees here in Australia, which means it's cold for us. So, are solo RPGs just glorified creative writing activities? Let me explain what I mean. Basically, my day job is that of an English teacher. Uh, in the senior years, more like sort of a literature type study. And one thing that we often do is we get our students to write a story, to write a creative piece. But in order to sort of challenge them and get them to all be on the same page, we give them some form of stimulus, some sort of image or phrase or something like that, which inspires their imagination, in theory at least. You know, little Timmy is always able to turn whatever picture of a flower you give him into some sort of gory, bloody horror scene. And I couldn't help but feel that, in a way, solo RPG is not all that entirely different. If you look at all the sort of role-play games that come out, the books, the high-budget stuff, there is a lot of emphasis placed on concept art. Kickstarters sort of really spruik stretch goals of including more and more concept art and tables that get very granular in what you can roll and achieve. And you can see why. Like, ultimately, this art is beautiful and it does spark imaginations and concepts for stories. But it's a little bit confronting for new people to solo RPGs to just realize you're just giving me schoolwork. You're just showing me a picture and then asking me to what? Write down a story myself? Like, why don't I just go to like Disney and plug in one of their Marvel-y Manda dinosaur thing? And that is a very good question. Like, ultimately, why wouldn't you just sit and watch a movie where you can basically imagine yourself onto some sort of blank slate character as a form of role playing? Well, I think where the difference lies is in the G part of our RPG. The fact that it is still a game, at least most of them are. For most people they are. Even the most sort of free form, I'm making this up and I'm being funny and I'm filming it for YouTube because ultimately that's the popular thing to do now. Nonetheless, the game part is there and it's important. Why? Well, I think the reason really why is it forces you to go with your second or even third most obvious option to how a plot should resolve. I mean, we all know the cliches. There is some random princess in a tower. You need to fight dragon to save dragon. So I get my sword, I charge in, I stab dragon, I kill dragon, I get princess. At least that's how we used to think. But regardless of the trope or the genre, there's usually a fairly straightforward narrative way that stories are meant to proceed, which we even sort of subconsciously know. And that is where the dice really come in. Yes, you can use the dice to roll and get ideas through some sort of random table chart thing. I love a good random table chart. However, what the real power of the dice is the fact that when you go to do the obvious thing, you go to draw your sword to slay said dragon, the dice can say no. The dice can tell you that, no, you can't follow that trope. That sword that you just drew was a complete con. The blacksmith wasn't even the blacksmith. It was a con artist. It's now reverted back to being, a salamander or something. And now, all of a sudden, you need to solve this problem that you still have. There is still a dragon there with a salamander. How do you do that? How do you problem shoot and figure out how you can fulfill your goal in this game with tools and situations that you did not intend, that you did not expect? That is where RPGs, I think, become really interesting. They force you to imagine scenarios outside of what you would traditionally imagine happening. That's what I find really exciting about role-playing games. They force you to think of solutions and scenarios that are outside what you would normally do. It forces you to role-play a situation that you necessarily wouldn't pick to put yourself into. And this has two benefits. I mean, ultimately, it gets your creative juices flowing. We love the idea of being creative, even if you're not an overly creative person. And the other thing it does is it's kind of cathartic. I mean, how often in your actual life do you come across a problem where you think the most obvious solution is just to go from point A to B, but then someone from management tells that you can't go to B without first going to D? It's nice to play a pretend where you can solve that problem, where you're able to make your way through. So yes, in a way, solo RPG is just some sort of elaborate, complicated, creative writing task where you get stimulus and you just write yourself a story. But I think you can't underplay the role that game mechanics have in putting a spanner in your plans, to putting a fly in that ointment. And now all of a sudden you've gone from this story about someone putting on makeup to instead someone trying to figure out the best way to fish out that stupid fly without wasting all of that money that you spent on this consumer product. And that makes for an interesting, out of the box, but nonetheless evocative, inspiring to that genre that you saw on the concept art story. So basically, if you're giving solo RPG a shot for the first time and feel a bit daunted at the fact that you have to write out this story, I get it, I feel it, I understand it, but be aware that yes, the trying to dive into the world of these random tables and beautiful art is just the beginning of the journey. The real journey are those diversions that the dice send you hurtling into. Anyway, that's what I think. Yeah, I could be wrong. Go ahead, try and persuade me in the comments that I've got no idea what I'm talking about. I'm up for that. And like and subscribe. Thank you so much for listening to this rant. I haven't done one of these in quite a while, and most people don't watch them anyway. But I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe you'll see me again later in the future. Okay, bye.